He's fine for now, but I'm keeping my options open.
Understood.
Bluetooth betrayal doesn't come with dramatic music. It comes with a tiny chime, and the kind of confidence you only get when you think the other person can't hear you. Lila's phone connected to my car the second she climbed in, like it lived here. Like she did. The dashboard lit up with her name, her little profile photo, smiling, head tilted, eyes bright in that practiced way that made strangers think she was honest. I'd seen that smile used on bartenders, HR reps, and my aunt at Thanksgiving. It was versatile, like her. "Can we swing by my mom's?" she asked, already half scrolling. "She needs help with something." "Sure," I said. "Your mom's emergency frequency is basically the weather." Lila laughed like I was adorable, like I was safe. Traffic was thick in that end-of-day way where everyone looks angry for no reason, and it was starting to get dark early like winter had a personal vendetta. Streetlights clicked on one by one. Wipers squeaked across a dry windshield because my brain was elsewhere and my hands were on autopilot. Lila hit call and tossed her phone into the console between us. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. The moment the call rang, my car did what it always did, because I'd set it up for convenience, back when convenience felt like love. It threw the audio onto the speakers. I didn't even register it at first. Her mom's voice filled the cabin so casually it felt like she'd been sitting in the back seat the whole time. "Hi, baby," Denise said. "You okay? You sound busy." Lila glanced out the window like she was telling secrets to the street. "I'm with him." Denise made a noise like she was tasting something and didn't like the texture. "Oh, him. Well, is he being good?" I kept my eyes on the road. A guy in a pickup drifted into my lane, then corrected like the asphalt had offended him. I let him go. I wasn't in the mood to fight for space. Lila sighed. "He's fine for now," she said, and it landed in my chest like a cold coin. But I'm keeping my options open. It took my brain a second to translate it into something human. My mouth didn't move. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. My pulse did this weird little hiccup, like my body wanted to react and couldn't find permission. Denise laughed, not surprised, not disapproving, just pleased. "Good," she said. "Because you're not 20 anymore, sweetheart. You need to be strategic. You need someone who can match you." Lila's nails clicked on the edge of the phone case. Tap, 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 like punctuation. "I know," she said. "I'm not stupid." That was the moment I started noticing little details my brain had ignored for months. The way she didn't say my name. The way him wasn't a person. It was a placeholder, a temporary file. Something you keep until you upgrade. Denise continued, voice lowering like this was mother-daughter bonding and not an autopsy of my relationship. "So, how's Seth?" I didn't blink. I didn't turn my head. I didn't tighten my grip. I just kept driving like we were talking about groceries. Lila smiled, actually smiled, like Denise had asked about a puppy. "He's consistent," she said, "and he knows what he wants." Denise purred. "And he has money, and he's not delicate." I almost laughed. Not because it was funny. Because delicate was what people called you when you didn't scream. When you didn't throw things. When you didn't make a scene. When you handled things. Lila's phone vibrated against the console and the screen lit up. I didn't look on purpose. I didn't need to. My eyes caught the glow anyway because humans are built to notice light in the dark. A message preview popped up for half a second. Seth Halden. "Did he drop you off yet? No hacking, no secret spyware. Just a man who assumed he was the main character and forgot other people had eyes." The inside of my car suddenly felt smaller, like the air had been used up and nobody told me. Lila didn't notice the message preview because she was too busy being adored by her mother. I just need to keep him calm until after the new year, Lila said. Then I can shift things. Good girl, Denise replied. You do what you have to, just don't get stuck. Men like him, they cling. Lila laughed again. He won't cling, he's predictable. I drove past my usual turn toward home. Lila didn't notice. We moved through a neighborhood of trimmed bushes and holiday lights that looked like effort without joy. Denise lived in one of those houses that always smelled like candle wax and expensive disappointment. As we got closer, my thoughts stopped feeling like thoughts and started feeling like steps. Clean, simple, one foot in front of the other. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't slam brakes. I didn't do anything theatrical. I just pulled over at the curb in front of Denise's house like I was dropping off a package. The car rolled to a stop. The engine stayed on. The call was still connected. Denise was still talking, unaware she'd been invited into the room where her daughter's life was about to change. You hear me, Lila? Denise said. You keep your options open. You don't apologize for it. Lila leaned back in her seat, comfortable. I'm not apologizing. I'm just managing. I turned my head slightly, just enough for Lila to see my face. I gave her the most polite smile I've ever worn in my life, the kind you use when you're about to fire someone and you want witnesses to say you were calm. Situation closed, I said. Lila blinked. What? I unbuckled my seatbelt with that soft click that usually meant we'd arrived somewhere normal. Get out, I said. Her mouth opened like she wanted to laugh, but the laugh couldn't find its way out. Are you serious? She whispered. On the speaker, Denise's voice sharpened. Lila, what's happening? Lila's eyes flicked to the phone, then back to me. Her pupils were smaller, not scared yet, more like offended. You heard me? She said, like I'd broken a rule. I nodded. Every word. Denise's breath caught on the line. Excuse me? I didn't look at the phone. I didn't give Denise the honor of eye contact. I just stared at Lila with the calm you can only get when something finally makes sense. You called me fine for now, I said. And I'm not a temporary file you keep on your desktop while you shop for an upgrade. Lila swallowed. Then she tried the smile, the one she used on bartenders. Oh my God, she said softly. Babe, you're taking it. Don't, I replied, not loud, just final. Her hand hovered over the door handle like she didn't believe the metal would obey her. Denise's voice came in hot now, all maternal authority. If you're trying to embarrass her, Owen, you're acting like a child. I almost admired it. Even now, Denise had picked her team. Even now, she was trying to label me something small so she didn't have to treat me like a threat. I leaned slightly toward the center console, close enough that my voice would carry cleanly through the car speakers. Denise, I said, calm as a bank teller, your daughter can stay with you, since she's already auditioning. Lila's face flushed. Stop talking to her. I'm not talking to her, I said. I'm closing something. Her phone buzzed again, and this time she snatched it off the console so fast it looked like guilt with hands. I saw the screen anyway. Not the content. Just the name. Seth Halden. Lila's thumb moved too quickly, hiding it, ending the call, erasing the evidence like that would roll time backward. She stared at me like I'd stepped out of the role she'd assigned. You can't do this, she said, voice tight. This is insane. I nodded once. Then you should love it. You said you like men who know what they want. She hesitated. Long enough for a porch light to flick on across the street, long enough for someone's curtain to shift. Then she opened the door. Cold air rushed in. The street smelled like wet leaves and someone's wood smoke. The sound of distant traffic felt far away, like the whole world had stepped back to watch. Lila stepped onto the curb in her heeled boots, unsteady because Indignation isn't great for balance. She turned back, one hand on the door frame, eyes sharp now. "You won't do anything," she said. "You never do." I smiled again, smaller this time. "Get inside," I told her, and my tone made it sound like advice. Her jaw clenched. Then she slammed my door hard enough to make the mirrors tremble. I watched her walk up Denise's driveway with her back straight and her shoulders tense, like she was trying to keep her dignity from leaking out. At the top of the driveway, Denise's front door opened. I couldn't hear what they said. I didn't need to. Because as Lila reached the porch, my car's speakers stayed silent. But my phone in the cup holder lit up with a notification from a number I didn't have saved. A new text. Just 3 words. "We need to talk." And under it, the name that had already become a problem in my life without ever shaking my hand. Seth Halden. The apartment smelled different when I got back. Same furniture, same walls, different gravity. Lila's shoes were still by the door, toes pointed outward like she'd kicked them off in a hurry. Her coat hung on the chair instead of the hook, because rules were for other people. A half-empty wine glass sat on the counter, lipstick mark still clinging to the rim like it expected her to come back and finish the thought. I locked the door behind me and stood there for a second, listening. Nothing. No TV, no shower running, no fake phone calls in the bedroom where she paced and practiced lines. Just the low hum of the fridge and the city breathing through the windows. This was the quiet part. The part people skip when they tell stories later. The inventory. I set my keys down, took my jacket off slowly. No rush. Rushing is how you miss things. First stop was the kitchen drawer. Passports, insurance cards. The little folder we pretended was shared, even though I was the only one who ever updated it. Everything was where it should be. Good. That meant she hadn't planned tonight. That meant she thought she had time. Time was the one thing she no longer had. My phone buzzed again. Same number. Seth Halden. "I think there's been a misunderstanding." Of course there was. There always is, right up until there isn't. I didn't reply. Silence makes people talk to themselves. I walked down the hallway, past the bathroom mirror where I caught my reflection and almost didn't recognize it. I looked. Fine. No red eyes. No wild hair. Just a guy who looked like he'd finished a long shift and was deciding what to eat. That version of me was useful. I kept him. In the bedroom, Lila's side of the closet was still packed tight, color-coordinated, seasonal. Mine looked like a man who traveled light even when he didn't have to. I pulled my duffel from the top shelf and started filling it with only what mattered. Documents, my laptop, a watch my dad gave me years ago that Lila once called aggressively sentimental. I'd laughed at the time. I didn't laugh now. Halfway through, I heard voices in the hallway. Not inside. Outside. I stepped to the door and looked through the peephole. Lila stood there with Denise beside her, arms crossed, mouth already set in that expression that meant she'd decided I was the problem and would be acting accordingly. Denise held a tote bag like she was here to supervise a crime scene. Lila knocked, sharp, confident. I waited a full 5 seconds before opening the door. Her eyes flicked past me immediately, scanning the apartment like she expected to see chaos, broken things, evidence of emotion. Instead, she saw calm. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Packing," I said. "Briefly." Denise scoffed. "Don't be dramatic." I stepped aside so they could see the open closet, the duffel on the bed. Not empty, not full, just enough. "This isn't drama," I said. "It's logistics." Lila laughed once, too loud. "You can't just decide this." "I didn't," I replied. "You did. In my car." Denise moved forward like she owned the place. "You're overreacting. Adults have conversations." I nodded. "We had one. You just didn't realize I was invited." Lila's jaw tightened. "You embarrassed me." I tilted my head. "No. I removed myself from a conversation where I was being managed." That word hit her harder than I expected. Her eyes narrowed, like she was recalculating. "You're not leaving," she said. "This is our apartment." I walked to the counter and picked up the lease folder. Not theatrically, just correctly. "It's a co-tenant agreement," I said, "with a clause about unauthorized occupants, and since you were planning to shift things after the new year, I assume you weren't planning to ask permission." Denise's face changed, just slightly. That was the tell. She hadn't read the lease. She never read the lease. Lila opened her mouth, then closed it. I continued. "I spoke to the property manager earlier. Tomorrow morning I'll file a notice of separation of tenancy, clean, documented." "You can't do that without me," Lila snapped. I met her eyes. "I already did." The silence that followed was thick enough to feel. Denise recovered first. "We'll talk to a lawyer." "Please do," I said. "They'll explain it better." Lila's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down before she could stop herself. I didn't need to ask. "I'm staying here tonight," she said. "No," I replied. "You're not." She stared at me like I'd slapped her. "This isn't a discussion," I added. "You have a place. You're already standing next to it." Denise stepped in close, lowering her voice. "You think you're winning something here?" I smiled, small and polite. "No, I'm closing something." Lila looked at the duffel, then at the lease, then at me. "You'll regret this," she said quietly. I zipped the bag. The sound cut clean through the room. "Maybe," I said. "But not tonight." She stood there for a second longer, like she was waiting for me to crack. I didn't. Finally, she turned and walked out. Denise followed, muttering something about ungrateful men and wasted time. I locked the door behind them. Then I sat on the edge of the bed and waited. Because the quiet never lasts. The parking garage at work smells like oil, concrete, and people pretending they're not tired. I like it there. Everything echoes, nothing hides. The next day moved fast in all the wrong ways. Emails, meetings, people asking how my night was with that polite tone that says they don't actually care. They're just confirming you're still functional. I was. By the time I headed down to the garage, the building was thinning out. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Footsteps sounded louder than they should. My phone buzzed. Seth Halden. "Can we clear the air?" I typed back one word. "No." I pocketed the phone and kept walking. Seth's car was easy to spot. New, clean, parked like he trusted the world. I passed it without slowing. That's when I heard footsteps behind me, faster than mine, confident, a man who believed momentum was authority. "Owen," Seth called. I stopped and turned. He looked exactly like I expected, well-fitted coat, expensive watch, smile that practiced reassurance like a sales pitch. "Hey," he said, "I think we should talk like adults." I glanced around the garage. Empty levels, cameras visible, good lighting. "About what?" I asked. He spread his hands. "Lila, this whole thing." I nodded slowly. "You mean the part where you texted her while she was in my car?" His smile twitched. Barely. But it twitched. "She told me you two were complicated," he said. I stepped closer. Not threatening. Just enough to shrink his space. "She told me I was fine for now," I replied. Sounds like a pattern. Seth chuckled, but there was sweat at his temples. "Look, man, nobody wanted this to blow up." "Yet here you are," I said. He leaned in slightly, lowering his voice. "You don't want to make this a bigger deal than it is." That was the moment I understood something important. He thought this was about ego. I smiled. "You already did." I turned and walked toward the stairwell. Behind me, Seth hesitated, then followed. "Hey!" he snapped. "I'm talking to you." I didn't stop. His footsteps sped up. That's when the gate at the end of the level began to lower. flashing lights pulsing as it closed for the scheduled evening lockdown. Seth broke into a jog. I didn't. The gate hit the ground with a hollow clang. Seth skidded to a stop, breath sharp, eyes darting. He turned back toward me, anger flaring. "What the hell is this?" "Maintenance schedule," I said calmly. "Posted by the elevators." He looked around, suddenly aware of the cameras, the echo, the fact that nobody else was around. I met his gaze. "You wanted to be an option," I said. "Options come with uncertainty." His phone buzzed in his hand. He glanced down, his face drained. "Compliance," he muttered. I stepped past him toward the stairwell. As I reached the door, I paused just long enough to say, "Tell Lila she was right about one thing." He looked up. "I do things," I said, "just not the way she expects." Then I pushed the door open and let it slam shut behind me. Denise's neighborhood looks polite from a distance. Neatly trimmed hedges, identical mailboxes, porch lights warm enough to suggest safety, but not warmth. It's the kind of street where people watch without admitting they're watching. I parked legally. Straight, tires aligned. No reason to give anyone a detail to cling to later. Lila's car was already there. Of course it was. I stepped out and felt the eyes before I saw them. A curtain twitched 2 houses down. Someone across the street pretended to water neglected plants. Phones stayed low, but ready. This was a good street for stories. Denise's front door was open. Lila stood just inside, arms crossed, posture rigid like she'd rehearsed being unbothered. Tess lounged on the couch behind her, shoes still on, phone in her hand, screen dark but angled just right. She smiled when she saw me. Not friendly, anticipatory. "Owen," Lila said, "you didn't have to come here." "I did," I replied. "I'm picking something up." Her brow furrowed. "What?" I held up the small cardboard box. Nothing dramatic. Just old photos, a watch stand, letters from a life she'd already mentally archived. Denise appeared behind her, lips pursed. "This is unnecessary." "So was the speakerphone," I said. Tess snorted before she could stop herself. Lila shot her a look. "This isn't funny." "It kind of is," Tess said lightly. "I mean, it's intense, but intense is good content." I didn't look at Tess. I didn't need to. People like her orbit chaos the way moths orbit light. You don't argue with them. You just don't feed them. I stepped inside just far enough to retrieve the box from the side table. Lila moved to block me. "You don't get to just walk in here like you own the place." I stopped, calm, measured. "I'm not walking in," I said. "I'm walking out." Denise crossed her arms. "You think you're some kind of hero right now?" I met her gaze. "No, heroes explain themselves. I'm just finishing." Lila's phone buzzed in her hand. She looked down automatically. That was her mistake. "You told him I was predictable," I said softly. "Did you also tell him you panic when things get quiet?" Her head snapped up. "You don't know anything." I nodded. "You're right. I don't know everything. Just enough." Tess's phone came up a little higher. I could see my reflection in the black glass. "Careful," I said, finally looking at her. "You're about to film something you won't know how to edit." She froze. For half a second, long enough to tell me I'd landed it. Lila's voice sharpened. "Stop talking like you're in control." I leaned in just slightly, keeping my voice low so they had to lean in too. "You called me fine for now," I said. "This is the part where now ends." Her face flushed. Denise stepped forward, indignant. "You're humiliating her." "No," I replied. "I'm not protecting her anymore. There's a difference." Outside, a car slowed as it passed. Someone laughed too loudly from a backyard. I turned toward the door. Behind me, Lila said it, the thing she couldn't keep in. "Seth said you wouldn't actually do anything." I paused. Then I looked back at her, calm as a flat line. "Tell Seth," I said, "that this street has great acoustics. and so do parking garages. I stepped out into the open air. The door closed behind me, but the story didn't. Not even close. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed. A new message. Gavin Rourke. We need to have a conversation, tomorrow. Private. I smiled as I unlocked the door. Private was how people kept messes alive. The mall should have been empty. Instead, it was pretending. Half the stores were shuttered, brown paper taped behind dusty glass like bandages nobody expected to remove. The other half buzzed with temporary life. Job fair banners, folding tables, branded pens nobody wanted. Fluorescent lights hummed overhead, uneven and tired. The kind of sound you stop noticing until it stops, and suddenly you feel exposed. I stood near a coffee kiosk that smelled burnt and desperate, watching reflections move across polished tile. People passed without really seeing one another. Perfect place for mistakes. Cal leaned against a pillar beside me, arms folded. You didn't have to come. I did, I said. He glanced around. You know this is public. That's the point. My phone vibrated. Seth Halden. I'm here. I didn't respond. I already knew. He appeared at the far end of the corridor, scanning the crowd like he was shopping for exits. He spotted me and adjusted his jacket, confidence sliding back into place like a mask he'd practiced in mirrors. He walked fast. Too fast. Owen, he said when he reached me, this is getting out of hand. I took a sip of coffee and winced. This is terrible. He glanced at the cup like it mattered. We don't need an audience. I looked around. You brought one. Cal shifted slightly. Not threatening. Just present. Seth lowered his voice. You think you're clever, but you're going to cost people their jobs. I nodded. You already did that. His jaw tightened. You don't know how this works. I leaned in just enough for him to smell the coffee. You were never her option, I said. You were her audition. That did it. He grabbed my sleeve. Not hard, not violent, just enough to draw attention. I stepped back, deliberately catching my foot on the edge of a folded table. Branded pens scattered, a banner tilted and fell. People turned. Seth released me like I'd burned him. Don't touch me, I said clearly. Loud enough. Calm enough. Mall security started moving in our direction. Slow at first, then faster. Seth's face went pale. He took a step back, bumping into someone holding a clipboard. I didn't, he started. I raised a hand. We're done. His phone rang. He answered without looking at the screen. What? He snapped. Then his shoulders dropped. Yes, he muttered. I understand. He hung up and stared at the floor tiles like they'd rearranged themselves. Cal exhaled quietly beside me. That was compliance. Seth looked up at me, eyes sharp with something close to fear. You planned this. I shook my head. You did. I just read the signs. He stepped back again, scanning for an exit. Check your company car policy, I added, and your parking reimbursements, and the guest badge logs you thought nobody cared about. He turned and pushed into the crowd. Not running, not yet. I watched him disappear between pop-up booths and folding chairs. Cal looked at me. You sure you want to keep going? I thought about Lila's voice in my car, about fine for now. I'm not escalating, I said. I'm finishing. My phone buzzed again. A group text this time. Lila, we need to talk, tonight, all of us. Under it, a calendar invite. Company gala, tonight. I stared at the screen as the mall lights flickered overhead. The building settled around us, a tired animal shifting its weight. Looks like a stage, Cal said quietly. I slipped my phone back into my pocket. It is, I replied, and they already know their lines. The hotel ballroom smelled like citrus cleaner and money. That specific blend you only get when donors arrive before the truth does. Crystal chandeliers hung low enough to feel intentional. Linen-covered tables formed neat little islands of confidence. People smiled with their whole faces because cameras were everywhere, and nobody wanted to be the person caught blinking at the wrong moment. I adjusted my cuff, not because I was nervous, because it was something to do with my hands. Lila stood near the bar, back straight, hair perfect, laughing too loud at something Gavin said. She wore red. Not subtle red, strategic red. The kind you wear when you want to look chosen. Seth wasn't laughing. He hovered near the valet entrance, checking his phone every few seconds like it might give him permission to leave. He kept patting his pockets, probably realizing too late that confidence doesn't count as transportation. Gavin spotted me first. His smile froze for half a second before recovering. "Owen," he said, stepping into my path. "Good to see you. Can we talk somewhere quieter?" I looked around, at the donors, at the phones, at the reflections in the mirrored walls. "No," I said. "This works." His jaw tightened. "You're making this harder than it needs to be." I leaned in just enough to keep my voice low. Hard as pretending this didn't happen. Behind him, Lila noticed us. Her smile flickered when our eyes met, then snapped back into place like muscle memory. She excused herself from the bar and walked over, heels clicking with purpose. "There you are," she said, like I'd been late to my own life. "Can we please not do this tonight?" I studied her face. The makeup was flawless. The eyes were not. "You invited me," I said. "Calendar invite, remember?" "That was for a conversation," she replied. "It still is," I said. "Just not the one you practiced." Seth edged closer, drawn by instinct or panic. I couldn't tell which. His tie was crooked now. Sweat darkened the collar of his shirt. "Owen," he said, forcing a smile for the nearby donors, "let's step outside." I shook my head. "You already tried that." A server passed with champagne flutes. Someone laughed behind us. The room stayed bright and oblivious. Gavin lowered his voice. "If this is about personal matters, we can handle it internally." I met his eyes. "You already are." That was when Lila snapped. "You're doing this on purpose," she hissed. "You want to embarrass me." I tilted my head. "You embarrassed yourself in my car. I just stopped editing." Her breath caught. For the first time all night, she looked unsure. Seth's phone buzzed again. He looked down, then up, then back down. "What is it?" Lila demanded. He swallowed. "They revoked my access, effective immediately." Gavin stiffened. "That's not possible." I finally spoke clearly enough for the nearest table to hear, not loud, just precise. "Compliance reviewed the incident reports," I said. "The badge logs, the guest entries, the repeated reimbursements tied to non-work travel. They asked questions." Heads began to turn, subtle at first, then more. Seth stepped back, bumping into a valet podium. "You said this wouldn't happen," he snapped at Lila. She stared at him. "I didn't say anything." "You said he wouldn't do anything," Seth shot back. That landed. People love a crack. They lean toward it without realizing. Lila turned to me, eyes flashing. "You promised you weren't like this." I smiled, small and calm. "You promised I was fine for now." The valet doors slid open behind Seth. A uniformed attendant approached, clipboard in hand. "Sir, your vehicle has been relocated due to an outstanding issue." Seth's face drained. "What issue?" "Permit violation," the attendant replied. Repeated. Seth looked at me then, really looked. "You set this up," he said. I shook my head. "You did. I just stopped standing in the way." Gavin stepped forward, voice sharp now. "Owen, this is enough." I met his gaze. "No, this is the end." Lila's composure finally broke. "We can fix this," she said, reaching for my arm. I stepped back. "You don't fix options," I said. "You close them." The room felt tighter. Phones were out now, not obvious, just enough. Seth turned toward the valet exit, desperation edging into his movements. He tried to push past the attendant. A security staffer stepped in smoothly. Not aggressive, just present. "Sir," the staffer said. "We need you to remain here." Gavin's face collapsed, not in anger, but in calculation. He was already deciding who would survive this. Lila stood frozen, red dress blazing under the lights, finally realizing there was no version of tonight where she walked away admired. I leaned in one last time, voice low, steady. "Compliance is downstairs," I said, "and so is the footage. Good luck explaining which part you thought was optional." Seth stopped moving. Lila stopped breathing. Gavin didn't look at either of them. He looked at the floor. And that was the moment, the exact second, their world tipped far enough that it couldn't come back. I turned and walked away as the room began to murmur behind me.